Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next CEO interview series, Leadership Lessons in Combination with Comparably and Entrepreneur Media. I'm so happy and excited to have Maggie Timoney, the CEO of Heineken USA, here with us today. What's up, Maggie?
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for pronouncing my name correctly. Most people get that wrong.
Well, we've just been looking forward to chatting with you for a really long time. Excited for so many great things to dive in. For those of you that are joining the series for the first time, this is a show that we do again in combination with Comparably and with Entrepreneur Media, where we get to profile amazing CEOs like Maggie, hear their life lessons, their leadership lessons, and have a really thoughtful and transparent if I knew then conversation about what lessons that they learned in their professional life and personal life. I'm a massive Heineken fan. I've been, drinking it since it was of legal age. I told you this story, Maggie, before we started. When I was 18, was fortunate enough to go backpacking with my three best friends from high school, and went to the Heineken factory in Amsterdam. And, after they very graciously let you try all the different libations, you have to walk through the gift store. So I think we walked out with 8 huge bags of Heineken materials. I'm not sure our parents, at the time looked too kindly upon us. Obviously different drinking ages in Europe and the United States. But it's just such an amazing brand and such an amazing suite of products that so many people love. Yeah, for those of you, again, that are joining us here, Comparably is a platform where we help showcase company cultures. We're an employee review site. And so we're going to talk a lot today about the amazing culture aspects of Heineken, as well as Maggie's journey. And so excited to dive into so many different things here. Obviously, everyone watching is a customer and probably loves Heineken themselves. In your own words, Maggie, how do you describe the Heineken USA business today?
Well, the Heineken USA business today is an innovative and exciting business for sure. We have our core brands of Heineken, Dos Equis, Tecate, and we're also launching a plethora of new innovations, either line extensions on the core brand or other new innovations. So the culture is one of, and it goes back to when Freddie Heineken founded Heineken, the company. He was a real entrepreneur, and we've carried that trait through all of our companies and operating companies worldwide, and specifically now in Heineken USA in the last few years, really being innovative, entrepreneurial, while still maintaining that family feel and those family values, which are centered around people and planet and quality. So I feel very blessed and fortunate that I've been able to work at Heineken in many different capacities across many different countries over the last 23 years. I can hardly believe it. It's gone by so quickly.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm definitely excited to talk about that. One of the things I'm curious to get your take on is, to me, Heineken stands out as one of the most globally respected brands. It's obviously a great product. I think anyone, who, has your drinks loves them right away. It's always been a drink of my choice for many, many years. But I think one of the things is it feels like it's one of those premium brands like Apple and Mercedes, and yet it's, it's a drink company. And I'm curious to get your take, like on what makes the brand itself so powerful.
I think one of the things is that it's available, I think, in almost every country in the world, if not every country in the world. So anywhere you've gone, whether you said Amsterdam, or I lived in Canada, or I worked in Amsterdam, and I was in Algeria and Kazakhstan and South Africa, Dubai. And those moments, whether it's professional or personal, you can always share a Heineken in those moments. So A, it's well known because you see it wherever you go. B, it's the same consistent quality, which is one of our values, passion for quality. And we're a majority family-owned company at the end of the day. So we don't take any short-term decisions that will have longer-term ramifications for our brands or our business. We do things for the health of the company in the long term. So we never compromise on our production quality. Our ingredients is the same ingredients for the past 150 years or more. And we protect this jewel, and this is a Heineken 0.0. We protect this jewel in the crown because it's an important brand for us. It has the family name on it. Charlene Heineken is the only daughter of Freddie. And we protect her and her family's name on the bottle. And we always, we grow it steadily and consciously and sustainably for the long term.
One of the things I'm really curious to get your take on too is it's so rare today to find anyone that works at the same company 5 or 10 years, let alone 23. You know, you've obviously had so many different careers and work lives at Heineken, done so many amazing things there. But I'm curious to get your take on, you know, the value of being at an organization that long and the unique perspective you have, because it's just so different than the vast majority of people's careers today. And especially folks that I would say are 40 years and under. You know, it's not unfamiliar in the space that I'm in the tech space, to see folks that are at a different company every year, 18 months. And I always try to tell people, I don't think that's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah.
You know, at some point, being at a different organization every 18 months is not helping you get farther along in your career.
No. And I think, Jason, and that's a good point, because sometimes the grass always looks greener on the other side. And I think for me personally, it probably comes down to two things: culture and then opportunity, right? So it was both. And maybe it goes back to my childhood. I'm from a small town, Ballina, County Mayo, in the west of Ireland, youngest of 4 children. Happy childhood, family, neighbors. And when I joined Heineken on January 5th, 1998, I got that sense of those same values and the culture, which I loved. And then you could say, well, you joined Heineken in the US, maybe it's just a Heineken USA culture. But because I've worked in the Netherlands and Canada and did projects in many countries, and then worked back in Ireland for 5 years, which is the first time I'd ever worked in Ireland in 2013, because I left to go to college here. For me personally, I found that family theme from my childhood to the university. I went to Iona College in New Rochelle, embraced by a New York college. It felt like a family. Then I went to Heineken. So the culture fit me, number one. And number two, I also like to win because I played basketball at Iona, so that also helps. So maybe it's culture, competitiveness, and opportunity, because I had the opportunity to grow in my career. But I think for anybody watching, just be careful that you don't jump for what may seem like a great opportunity, when a lateral move in your own company might give you the depth and scope of experience that you need. So sometimes people jump too soon. I've taken, I think twice in my career, lateral moves. I didn't get a salary increase. It was a lateral move, different experience. And I learned. I mean, I went to Canada, lateral move. I learned so much by being a general manager in Canada, managing a joint venture. Then I had to jump into HR, of all things. I come from a commercial general management background. Will you please go into HR and be not only into HR, be the head of HR in Heineken USA back in 2010, which I was like, I mean, that was scary. But I always say that probably the pivotal moment in my career was when I took that job. For 2 reasons. One, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Let's be honest. You don't know. You have to figure it out. I had to rebuild a team. I didn't have any real capabilities in HR, but I like to lead people and I like to be part of a team myself, number one. And number two, I took the job to make an impact on our results. So I think maybe in the HR functions or corporate affairs, finance, okay, they feel more connected to results, but those other functions, you go in there knowing you're going to make an impact on the results. And that's a different thing as opposed to supporting and, taking a back seat to the more customer facing commercial functions. Mm-hmm. So I think, that culture, opportunity and winning has helped me through Heineken.
It's amazing. We're definitely going to talk more about the company's culture and values here in a little bit. You make me think of something too. It's advice I often try to share with folks, which is, you said it perfectly. The sense is that the grass is always greener. We're obviously in a once in a lifetime job market where people are being recruited like never before. I always wonder, why folks don't ask more of the existing company that they're at before they make a move somewhere else. So for example, if you're already thinking about or ready to leave your company because somewhere else is going to offer you a little bit more salary, a little better title, what feels like is the next move in your career, why not go to your existing employer, your existing manager and say, this is what I'd love to get out of my experience here. This is what I'm willing to give in return, and see what that company has to offer. Because to your point, I think what happens is folks often leave organizations too soon without maximizing the full potential and benefits, not only that they can give to the company, but what they can get in return. Along that topic, I think there are a lot of folks that are going to be watching this series that say to themselves, Maggie, I wouldn't ever know how to work my way up in an organization to be, the CEO of a global brand. And as you think about the last 25 years of your career, you obviously must have done things unique and special and different that put you in the position that you're in today. If you had to summarize why you feel like you've had so much success at taking on more responsibility and more leadership, what's been that secret for you?
It's funny. Not funny. It's interesting. We had a group of interns at Heineken USA this summer. A group of diverse, smart, open, brave, juniors in college. And one of them said to me, what was your, you're at the title, back to having a title versus, CEO of Heineken USA versus Maggie, the person. And he said, what was your plan? Right? And I said, I didn't have a plan. Now, people may look at me and say, oh my God, I can't believe she said that. I got a job and I focused on doing that job to the best that I could and deliver the results. And then, I don't know if it's a female thing, hoping I get the tap to say, hey, great job, and here's another job. And you could say I got lucky along the way, or I delivered along the way. So I think delivering results is really, really important. And particularly this next generation, they're so inundated with trying to be perfect, and they're doing one thing, but then they're doing 85 different things. Focus at the job at hand, do a great job, and wonderful things will happen. The worst thing you can do is, I have this job and I'm already eyeing the job next level up or 3 levels up. You're not going to get there if you don't deliver in the current job that you're in. And I think I did that. I focused on the job. And also, and this is it's me. I played basketball. I played a team sport. And Dan will probably laugh because I also say I love my own ideas, but it's really not about me. It's about the team, and we deliver the results through the team. And I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the ideas. I'm not a marketeer. So, Johnny, I trust that you know what you're doing. You have the capability. Your team has the capability. And listen, if people don't have capability, that's a different story. You have an honest conversation with someone. But it's really delivering results through, I like to do it through others. I don't have all the answers, and that's absolutely okay. And you shouldn't have all the answers. And if you think about the pandemic and companies that have thrived, survived, or not made it, that's when you really needed to work together to, figure a way out of the crisis. And if before the pandemic hit, you were trying to do all that yourself, then you probably didn't have a great experience through the pandemic as a business.
What do you feel like are the soft skills and the EQ skills that you either started your career with or developed along the way that helped you advance so much? I often try to coach the folks that work for me and the companies that I invest in and I'm a part of, that it's just like, as you really want to excel in your career, so little of it becomes about your technical proficiency and what you know. And so much more of it is about people wanting to be on your team and to be around you and the way that you interact with folks. And that's just so much less of what people tend to focus on. In your case, what do you feel like were those soft skills and EQ that helped you just get along farther, faster?
I definitely learned along the way. And I think one of my earliest lessons, I just actually talked to somebody this morning, but this person was having a bit of a struggle. And I said, well, he's imposing his work style on you. And early on, I was in the office at 7 a.m. and some people would be in at 6 or whatever, but I was in at 7. I was working till 7 at night. And this one lady, if she's listened to this, she'll know, Jackie was coming in at 9 or 9:30. And at a certain point, I was getting really annoyed. So I went to our boss, Andy, and I said, I remember standing at his desk going, look, she's coming at 9 o'clock, 9:20, what the hell is going on here? And he looked at me, and he's an amazing, amazing person. And he said, don't impose your work style on hers. She likes to work later at night. She's not a morning person. And something went off in my head that, and we all do it, right? We like mirror images of ourselves. We like people to look like us, act like us. And that's already an issue for inclusion and diversity. But I remember that moment thinking, it clicked for me. And like a year later, the president of Heineken USA came down, and he said he had a clean desk policy. And he said, your desk needs to be cleaned up. His desk was perfect. He was a finance guy anyway. And he said to me, you need to clean your desk. And I said, don't impose your work style on me. And it was just those moments where, I had to learn. I had to learn that. But along the way, people give you these nuggets. And I'll give you one that my dad gave me at a very young age. It's just why I am who I am. Whether you like me or not, I'm Maggie, and I'm nothing else but Maggie. I mean, you can put the title there, but that's not who I am. My dad always said, Margaret, because they call me Margaret, whether you're the man sweeping the street or the Pope, because an Irish Catholic, the Pope's in the picture on the wall. It's at the end of the day, it's dust to dust, ashes to ashes. And I was really young, but I'll never forget that. So whether it's, I don't know, whoever it is, I don't treat anyone any differently. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to end up in the same place, and we all have the right intent to do the right things. The majority of people are good people and try and do the right things. So the intent is there. So those little nuggets, I think for me, EQ, are just showing up as I am, which is good and bad, right? Because you are who you are, and Dana knows I always say you have the beauty spots and you have the warts, right? So, but I show up, and I try to be open, and I try to get feedback from wherever I can, and hopefully people will give me the real feedback versus saying something they think that I want to hear. I think I always say that's a gift you give people to help them be better, whether they stay within your company or they go to a better job somewhere else. Give people those little, something you notice, should I say that? And then I tell you, I think 9 out of 10 people don't say it. Say it, help people be better. That's your contract with them.
We're obviously just such an incredibly introspective and humble and thoughtful leader. How do you think about coaching your direct reports? How many direct reports do you have today? And as you 7. Think about 7?
Well, 7 on the management team, is that 9? Yeah.
And so as you think about how you try to empower those 7 to 9 folks and help them be leaders in organizations, like give us a little bit of a window into a typical one-on-one that you do with them. Like, how do you structure it? What do you go over? what are the nuggets that you share with them to help them drive results in the organization?
God, I could talk all day about this. I call them the motley crew, lovingly, because we're all very, very different, which is also good because when you put all those jigsaw pieces together, that makes a nice puzzle versus having people who all think the same. Well, the first 10 minutes, I'm chatting. How are things? How was your weekend? Did you see the match? How are the kids doing? What's Joseph? Because we all have lives outside of work, and in particular during the pandemic, we maybe have underestimated the value of just reaching out and actually taking 10 minutes to say, how are you doing? This is not easy. There's no playbook for this. You're working at home. I remember we wrote the first company communication. I said, the dogs are crying and the kids are barking, and that's okay. That's okay, because all of a sudden you see people's, we're on a call this morning with our distributor council, and the construction people were in Lawrence's house. You hear the jackhammering, and it's really an update on how things are going, some key topics, and any support needed from me. Do we need to escalate anything? Do we need to hop on a meeting with 2 or 3 other people on the team to solve something? And during the pandemic, they were much more frequent, right? Not just one-on-ones, but we had task force meetings on health, and wellness, keeping people safe, business continuity. Shoot, the world is falling apart. How do we keep the business going? And equally important, business opportunity. So we also adapt and flex as needed. It's not so structured. I mean, every 2 weeks I have one-on-ones, and every week we have some type of a team meeting, whether it's a smaller group of the management team or the full management team, depending on the topic. So why waste people's time? And we really try to adapt and flex as needed. And the minute I get a text from someone saying, can I have 15 minutes today? Then absolutely. Or people text or call. I think one of the downsides of how we work today, the upside is the flexibility, working at home and then working in the office when we go back, but also you have WhatsApp, text message, Teams chats, email. That's becoming a bit too much. So we need to put some boundaries and structure back in to keep people sane, because I'm definitely going crazy to think, did I miss something? Because there's so many modes of communication. So communication is so important, but then now we have too many mediums of communication. Does that make sense, Jason?
I think it makes sense for a whole lot of folks. I think so many of us are trying to figure out our way through it. I think you and I may share a perspective that, more isn't always more. There's one of the phrases that, I try to, and I think you started your career in sales early on, right?
Yeah.
I try to remind my team, don't be afraid to just pick up the phone. The phone is your friend. It's great that there's, email and Slack and text, but if you want to get something done, whether it's in our own organization or with a potential partner or a client, you got to be in front of them. You got to be talking to them, So I'm very much in your camp. How do you think about, I'm curious to get your take on how you obviously have this really thoughtful philosophy of, in talking about what you just said, don't impose your management style. How do you know when to draw that line of being flexible and letting things come from the team and their styles and their personalities versus when knowing to say, hey, this is a course or direction that we should go, and this is driven from my past experience or values? I think one of the things that we dive into these conversations a lot about is really knowing when to sit back and to be a coach and a cheerleader of your team versus when you might need to do a little bit more directing on a specific area. How do you know when to be on
Yeah.
either side
And
of that fence?
that's an unbelievable question, because yesterday my boss was in visiting. It was great to see him. We had a chat. And when people go for jobs, they test them. But judgment, it's difficult to test for judgment. And it probably links to emotional intelligence a bit, where you have a topic. There might be conflict in the team in terms of, hey, I don't agree. And then you know, at a certain time, if you can go on for weeks, right? But you have to make a decision, because a decision needs to be made in order to move forward. So it's the judgment on the timing of when to do that. And yeah, maybe I think I do it fairly well. And the times that I don't, I create a safe environment that, you know, Tim will call me and say, can I talk to you? You know, you didn't consider these two things and you went too early. And that's good, because if you don't create a psychologically safe, and psychological safety, you know, the buzzwords, like, easy to say, very difficult to do. So I try to use I observe, give my opinion, and if there's conflict on the team or we need to get to a decision, then I'll make the call. I mean, when I played basketball, you know, at the end of the game, I usually wanted the shot, you know. I wanted the shot. Never met a shot I didn't like when I played basketball at Iona College.
That was my sport as well too. So I'm trying to restrain myself from deviating to a full-on basketball geek out here with you. So maybe we'll set that to the end.
Many lessons. I mean, there's so many lessons from sport into business. And I always think about, you know, when you're playing sports, right? If you're having a bad game or you're not up to the task, right? You're benched. But somewhere when you go into business, you have to be capable and competent to do your job. And if you don't have the right the capabilities first, and I always say, I need you to be capable in your function. I need you to be a great leader equally. And the third thing I want is to have a broader business perspective than just your function. They're the three things I look for. But I'm not going, you could be a star functionally, but if you're not a great leader, then I won't hire you. I'd rather less of a star and a great leader, and I'll tell you that he or she will move mountains. So you can't accept mediocrity, but somewhere from sport to business, we allow maybe the person to play the game a bit too long.
So how do you test for a great leader? What are the qualities that either when you're interviewing a candidate or that when somebody works for you, how do you know when somebody's a great leader?
Well, in my interviews, I don't know if I usually ask, listen, you can see a CV, a resume, and you know, oh my God, this person walks on water. But I assume that they know what they're doing. But when I get a person in front of me, I want to know who this person is. And that will tell me a lot about, are they open? I ask them the question, what are the three, if you're going to be stranded on a desert island, what are the three songs that you would bring with you and why? Because you're not getting off the desert island. So be really thoughtful. I don't say be really thoughtful. I say, for two reasons, can they think on their feet? Because it's usually in, you know, tell me about this marketing campaign that you developed. Oh, and by the way, what are the three songs that you would bring with you? So then I see, can they think on their feet? And believe a lot of the times it'd be surprising, number one, that they can't. Now I can't use that question anymore because it's been in the media. But then that tells me more about the person and why and what's important to them. And really, when you work with someone closely, it's more difficult on virtual. You see how they interact with the team, and we do climate surveys every year. try to do some 360s for my team to get not the 360 to fill out scores, but qualitative. So we get themes to help people be better. And, you know, I typically have a good sense of people.
So I want to take a journey a little bit through your career, you know, and where did you very first start your career? What was your very first job?
My very first, I graduated secondary school in Ireland, or high school as you call it here, early, not because I was really smart, but because I started school right as I turned 4. So I didn't know what I was going to do after high school. And nobody in my family at that point, from our small town in the west of Ireland, went to college. So I took a year's secretarial course. I'm a very fast typer, by the way, because of that, which had stood to me. And there was this, you could go through this company to get work experience. So I went on this interview and I ended up, long story short, because some of my stories can be a bit long-winded, I got the job, but when I didn't know what job it was, and then the guy said it's for Mayo Sligo Cooperative Livestock Mart, like where they auction off cattle and sheep. And I was devastated because I was playing basketball. I was in the newspapers a bit, and I was a bit too cool to work in a mart. So that was my first job. And this is probably another maybe tidbit for people. I didn't want to work there. I was like, this is not cool. I'm going to, it's not cool. But I have to tell you, I ended up not 6 months. I think I ended up there a year and a half. I loved it. The people were so different from me. They were older than me. There was farmers and tractors and the smell, but it's an unbelievable business. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, go through maybe weekly from auction cattle. I didn't know this at the time. But maybe that's where it started. I mean, I have to tell you, I probably never would have come to the US if they had kept me on full time. God knows what I'd be doing now. But that was my first job, and I learned to appreciate people, and the majority were women working there, and how they were inclusive of me, who hadn't a clue and was like, what are we doing here? And in the end, we were out, to pub quizzes and doing things as a team, age 60 down to, 18. So that was the first job. Then went to college, and then after college, went directly to grad school, also at Iona, helped coach the team because I loved playing there and I loved the college and I didn't want to leave. And then worked for Gallo in sales for a year. And then the Anheuser-Busch wholesaler that distributed our products asked me to join them. And I worked there for, I think, 7 years in the Bronx, different roles. And actually, I was talking to one of our great distributors in Texas, Andrew's distributing today. And he was talking about, what they're doing there in programs and getting CDL, commercial driver's licenses, for running a program to help people get their CDL. And I said, I just gave up my CDL like 5 years ago. It was the first thing when I joined the distributor. I had to get a commercial driver's license, which is, driving a truck, because I was supervising 6 driver salespeople. And those things of being out of your comfort zone, whether it be in the mart or, having a commercial driver's license, and then joining Heineken in '98 and working in the US in a sales and strategic planning role, going to Amsterdam, working in global commerce, doing projects in all these countries where it just gave me a better perspective on cultures and religions and people. Then going to Canada, 4 years. Loved it there in Toronto, then back here for the HR job in the US for 3 years, and then going back to Ireland for the first time and working in Ireland as head of Heineken Ireland for 5 years, which was daunting a bit because I'd never worked at home and I was back home, but I cut my business teeth elsewhere. But also very special to be, with my husband and 2 kids in Cork, with Heineken Ireland, who's a phenomenal company and great people.
I want to spend a moment on the sales side of things. I often lament that in primary education, as you're going through 5th grade to 12th grade, that we don't teach things like sales and finance and leadership. And I think so much of the skills that actually help us be successful as professionals and build more wealth and make more money are the things that aren't taught, and they're sometimes looked down on. I'm of the point of view that if I could wave a magic wand and have everybody spend a year or 2 of their career in sales, regardless of whether they're an engineer or a designer or they work in a factory, it'd be so meaningful, helpful. As you look back on the time that you spent in a sales role, what were the lessons that you learned there that maybe helped you either get to where you're at today as the CEO of Heineken USA, or help you be more successful as the role and spot that you're in today?
That's actually a good question. I never really thought about how did my sales roles help me. And I think the number one thing when you're thrown into sales for the first time, when you come out of college, and I came out, I had 2 degrees. I couldn't get a job because I had no work experience. And I was like, that's a bit of a strange thing because I have 2 degrees, but someone needs to give me some work, give me a job to get the work experience. So when I started at Gallo, I had to figure it out. So you're thrown in, you get some training. Gallo has excellent training, but then you have to figure it out. And number one, for me, trying to find my way to all the different accounts because I'm a bit directionally challenged. But number 2, dealing with, at a young age, all these different types of people in a bodega, in a chain account, all different nationalities, and trying to get your point across. So I think, we don't teach that in schools. What we teach, I think, which is really good in the US, is getting up in front of people and speaking. So the presentation, but we don't necessarily teach the tips, the tricks of how you approach something, feature to benefits. I don't know, you're learning about geography and history. That's all very important too. But do we really prepare our kids for the world, to step into the world? You're probably right. You probably don't. But I think for me in sales too, I got promoted quickly. I had a great track record, and I talk a lot. I'm an extrovert. I'm a storyteller because I'm Irish, and that's how I grew up. But I got promoted. I sold a lot. I hit a lot of targets, and then I worked for the AB distributor, and they promoted me to be in charge of 6 of those driver sales guys, where I had to get the CDL and go on the trucks with them. But also you have to figure it out too. It's just something that, I don't know, resilience. And maybe because I left home to go to college here, and that was such a monumental, pivotal moment in my life of surviving on my own in New York, where the cars in New York were bigger than the bars in Ireland. So I had to figure that out. And then I finally got the job at Gallo. I had to figure that out. And then they made me a supervisor of these guys, and I was petrified, scared. I had to figure it out. So I don't know, is it too easy for kids today, or is it too easy that they don't have to figure so much out because we're all parenting and looking after them and doing too much for them? My son just started college. He's a freshman. When I started college, and I came to the other side of the world, there was no, mobile, cell phones and text messages, and, you had to figure it out. So I don't know about the next generation. Will they have the resilience and the fortitude to figure things out? Yeah, you've probed Yeah, some deep thinking, Jason, because that's a great question.
All right, so maybe one more that will probe some deep thinking. And I did prep you for this. So if you could take a time machine, Maggie, back into your 20s, and you could talk to that version of yourself, what professional advice would you give to 20-something Maggie?
I had seen that question. And I was like, I don't know how to answer that. That's what I was saying in my mind, you know. But then I think courage. Okay, I had the courage to come over here and go to college, right? Which was not easy as the youngest child, and I love being at home with my family. Love it. There's nothing better. And I always thought I'd go back, and it took me a long time to go back, and that was for the job. Probably courage to have a louder voice at a table, because as a woman, I'm in the beverage industry. We just launched our Behind the Label series, and chapter 1 is all about gender diversity in our industry across all, not just in beer, not just Heineken USA, but across the industry. And when I think about Behind the Label, gender diversity and attracting talent into our industry, female talent, the first chapter in the book, there will be other chapters on different topics. I wish that I had a louder voice at the table, because sometimes I would be in meetings as the only female, and I would try to get my point across, but I was talked over. So the image I had in my head today when I was going through again your questions was, I wish I had the courage to stand on the chair and shout. That's the image I had in my head. I wish I could have stood on the chair and shouted. But what happened was I would get frustrated, and then I would shut down. So if I look back, maybe I could have become a president or CEO earlier on in my career if I had that courage, but also if others gave space. So if you're out there, give space to the quieter voices. It could be male and female have quiet voices. Introverts have quiet voices. And give space and ask someone, what's your opinion? What do you think? Because we're also losing great ideas by not creating that space. And so I wish I had courage earlier. I have a lot more courage now, just because experience gives you courage. So how do you instill courage earlier?
And it's probably context dependent, because you certainly weren't afraid to take that game-winning shot at an early age.
No, true. That's
Sometimes
true. Yeah.
People just need the right opportunity to shine. Staying on that topic a moment, and it's such a beautiful explanation answer. I know that you and I talked a little bit about before we started the interview, your experience being in such a male-dominated industry. Clearly, there is not nearly enough women or people of color in executive roles today, right? As much progress as we've made, we're not anywhere close to where we should be.
Yeah.
You came up and are still in an industry that there's probably still much less parity. What was it like for you for these past 23 years to often be the only female at the table or in the meetings? I know you mentioned that sometimes you didn't even necessarily think of it that way, but in hindsight now and in retrospect, that's obviously a unique dynamic that you and so many women or people of color are dealing with. What was your experience like there?
Yeah. And I do think I was naive. I mean, I was blessed and fortunate to grow up in a family where my dad would take me out on the street. I have 2 sisters and a brother. Take me out on the street kicking a soccer ball with everyone else on the street. And then I played basketball. And so this kind of shapes maybe how I thought about it. I played basketball in Ballina County Mayo. There's a men's team and a women's team. And whenever we wanted to have a pickup game, you needed 10 people. And for the men, they didn't always have 10. So we were asked. Maybe that's how I got to be so good, at a certain point. So I felt included from a very, very young age. So then when I went into beverages, even when I went to Iona, I remember we would play, obviously, our season, And then there would be this group of men who would come on a Wednesday at 11 to play. And they didn't have enough for full court games, so they would ask us. So 3 or 4 of us would hop in and we'd play full court hoops. So I never thought it was strange that I was with all these men. So I was naive, so I didn't see it as a negative. The only thing I saw was, why aren't there more women? And because I wasn't trying to be a man, I wasn't trying to act like a man to fit in. I was myself. I think that probably helped me. But I do think, if you think about how included I felt, either with my family, with basketball, with males and females, we need to take chances on women earlier in their career. So when they get to an opportunity to be a CEO, to be a senior vice president, to be a director, to be a senior manager, to be a manager, they don't feel like this is the anomaly. This is the norm. Take chances on females earlier in the career. And our Behind the Label platform, with our first chapter on gender, we want to win for our industry the war on talent and get the best females into our company. Because remember, females outnumber males coming out of university. Who's going to get those stars? Our industry wants those stars, and we're taking the lead, and Heineken USA is taking that lead.
Did you ever feel, well, I'm not gonna say did you ever, how did you deal with those situations where people probably discounted you because you didn't look like them, or you didn't match who they were?
I like closure. If something's bothering me, I like to definitely have that conversation. And there's a couple of moments, one with the really high-ranking person, and one with I got angry to say, like, why are you treating me like this in one instance? So I had to address it. And actually, in this one instance, I won't go into any details, don't ever talk to me like that again. Because at the end of the day, and I said it to some females that have reached out to me, you have your own self-worth. You can go and work anywhere else, but don't tolerate being treated wrongly and unfairly. You don't have to accept that. And once I have that closure, then I feel better, and then I move on. And for me, that has helped me. And I just, one of my triggers is unfairness. You can look up the SCARF model. It's a model you have triggers. All people have triggers. Fairness is the F. So unfairness is one of my triggers, and that's good for me to be aware of, because then I need to be careful. I don't react emotionally, because it triggers my emotion. So I need to count to 10, slow down, think about it. How do you want to handle this? Some people, it's autonomy. Some status, S is for status, C is certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And also, I think as you go through your journey as leaders, as individual contributors, to try and really understand yourself so that you can do better work and lead others better. And you can learn from everywhere.
Well, that certainly sounds like you demonstrated a lot of courage, because I couldn't imagine that would be an easy conversation to have with anybody at any stage of your career. And so I think that's a pretty amazing example for a lot of folks out there. Let me ask the time machine question one more way. If you could go back just 5 years now, right, to where you're already a successful executive, you've had this illustrious career, you seem like somebody that is evolving and adapting every day to me. You just seem like one of the most thoughtful, introspective leaders that I've certainly had a chance to talk to, and we've done hundreds of these interviews.
Thank you.
If you could go back even 5 years ago, what professional or personal advice would you give yourself where you were at that point in your career?
So 5 years ago, I was still in Ireland. You know what? I think before I even came into this job, my advice is you may have preconceived ideas of a situation or of a person. And I've learned this along the way, but very recently I've learned this. Be open. Be more open to changing your opinion. And that's definitely something that over the last 5 years I've learned, that you have an impression of something or someone, and you might be a bit stubborn in how you think, but be open to changing your mind. And
what was an example of something that you lived through that reminded you of that? Because I know I am certainly guilty of not being open enough and, feeling like, okay, well, I've seen this before, here's the way I think it should work because I've seen 10 times before. And I think I fall guilty, for example, a lot to not being open enough. And I think there are these moments that I've had where it's, oh, well, I was wrong, or I was off, or there was a way just as good, if not better, to do something. And that's, those are for me what really helped me embrace your philosophy. Was there an example of a moment where you were really like, there's a question someone told me that I love asking, which is, what's an example of something that you were very certain about at one point in your life that you now feel very differently about?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Isn't it?
Well, in the last 5 years, there was maybe a person on my team before I came into Ireland or the US that I thought, this isn't going to work. And because I have strong convictions, and of course, as Dana knows, I like my own ideas. I actually, as a ritual and symbolism, and we had a topic yesterday that I can't talk about, that I think that's a stupid idea. Not a stupid idea, but so I actually now, I visualize. I was visualizing before visualization became the sexy topic, to be honest with you, back in Ireland, trying to learn how to do a left-handed layup, Jason, which you will understand. I have a switch that I turn on and a curtain that goes back that says be open, because it may not be a silly idea, or he or she will. And this person that I thought this is not going to work out has worked out beautifully. And even we're doing one of our innovations that I can't talk about. I said, listen, I remember the meeting going, are you out of your mind? I actually said, are you guys out of your mind? That's not going to work. So with the day, logic, I need data, because it's not my natural tendency. So I can judge my judgment is strong. So I always dial up the data. So they showed me the data. This is a real example. And when they're listening or reading this, they all know who they are. When I was like, you're out of your mind. And at the end I said, you know what? Okay, let's try it. But it's either bonkers or brilliant. So again, I really have that switch, curtain, and then, hey, park your own ideas and be much more open. So that's the newest thing over the last 5 years that I'm really working on. Because of course you have strong ideas, because you have experience that shapes your ideas. However, you're going to miss some brilliant ones if you're very closed.
Mm-hmm. Well said. What are you most excited about for the future of Heineken USA and Heineken as you think 10 years from today, and how the business is going to continue to evolve and what it's going to look like at that point, and how you are helping to invent the future for this brand and beverage company? What are you most excited about?
Yeah, when I close my eyes and visualize Heineken USA in 10 years' time, we're not just a lagers, we're predominantly a lager company, beer company, but we're going to be a beverage company that satisfies the needs of a full range of diverse consumers, and some of the unmet needs that they don't realize aren't there yet. So on the business side, I see market share growth, diverse portfolio across the United States. And when I look at our employees, I see a diverse faces looking back at me, and also people who think differently than me.
And as you think about how you maintain and build a world-class company culture, if I asked you to try to distill that down into a couple key principles, if you came into another organization and you were on the board, right? And if you were on the board of Comparably, and this was our time once a quarter, and I said, Maggie, I need your help making sure that we are the absolute best company at culture. We are, like everybody else, trying to figure out this new hybrid work model. I need your advice and counsel on how we're a world-class culture organization. What's the advice you would give us?
Well, I think first of all, you got to start with the culture you have, right? Because culture is your personality. Comparably, you have your culture, right? We have our culture. That's our personality. Your climate or your mood is something very different, because companies have mood swings depending on what they're going through. So that's why we do our climate survey and say, what's the temperature check on Heineken USA, which we're going through right now. Every operating company globally has the mood check or the climate check, so you get some real feedback on how you're going to improve. I think for companies, I always say, is it a culture or is it a culture? Because the first CULT is the first four letters of culture. So if Jason leaves or Maggie leaves or someone leaves, does it all fall down because it was too cult-like? So what are the pieces of your, like for Heineken USA, family, right, is part of our culture. We care. That's a strength. Of course, you have to be careful that when you care, it's not all one-sided, that you also, if it's a family and you care, you give the constructive feedback too. That you make it, that your culture is a very, for me, non-traditional culture. I remember when I went to Ireland, I said, well, why don't we launch a cider? Or we tried that before. I said, okay, why don't we do it again? It didn't work the last time. Well, that was 10 years ago. Maybe the timing is right now. Or why do we do it this way? That's the way we've always done it. So I think particularly now in the speed and pace of change, you need to honor the past, but embrace the future. So don't lose the good stuff, but you need to embrace what new technologies, data, digital, diverse inclusion, and you need to do it all, sustainability and responsibility. So it's about, honor that past, but embrace the future, and make sure you have those 3 or 4 symbols of your culture that you want to continue with, grow, strengthen, and be very clear what they are.
Yeah. There's an interesting topic that I love having a chance to engage with the folks like you. And so I always talked about company culture as a metaphor of a family. And I had a company before this that, we had an opportunity to grow, and we sold off to a large public company. And Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, came out with this book called The Alliance. And and I think this is what I'm about to say is also in part driven by the cultural aspects of, being in Europe versus the United States. And what he talked about is that for him, the better metaphor for organizations was not a family, but almost like a sports team, for a couple of reasons. Because if someone's part of your family, there should be unconditional love and support, and almost regardless of anything that they do, they're going to be part of your family. Where on a team, as you said earlier, right, if a team member is not performing well, or they're not working well with the team, they get benched. And he also talked about this concept that forever employment is just so rare these days. It's not like the generation we grew up in. And so about having this alliance that a company is going to invest in the candidate for a period of years, and the candidate will invest in the company, but also when it's time to part ways, not have it be this awkward, secretive thing, that it's almost planned. And both sides talk about it openly. Yeah. And one thing I found really powerful, and I use as a metaphor today, is that we're like a Division I sports team. And I see myself as the coach of that Division I sports team. And we're here to help you get to the next level. And we're going to ask you to, be the best team member and be with us here for a number of years. And then we want to help you be a superstar. And I'll tell you very candidly, I still feel a lot of tension about which metaphor, because on the one hand, I love this idea that we're all a family and the feeling that evokes in people. And on the other hand, I think probably the more appropriate analogy is that we are a sports team that are together here for a period of time for a collective goal. And then people are going to go on to other parts of their career afterwards. And I'm kind of just
or not. Like, do you have 23-year? I had a exit interview with somebody this morning briefly, just to say congratulations. He resigned. He's going on to a bigger job, bit more money. That's great. Congratulations. That's okay. And even in families, because I dropped my son off, he's a freshman. Kids fly the coop too, But I like that idea of the sports analogy, and also particularly because you need to also be grooming the next 3-point shooter, the point guard that comes behind you, because you know what, you're not going to be able to sustain the pace of being a point guard on the team for too long. You need to be able to sub in and out. So you need to make sure that you're retaining people, you're recruiting new talent in, but also developing people.
All right. Well, I've got one more really important question before we break. There is an arms race going on right now between the Lakers and the Nets. Keep in mind, I'm a Los Angeles native.
Yes.
If you had to put your money on the Lakers or the Nets being the next NBA champion, who are you leaning towards and why?
I have to go with the Nets because they're in my backyard here on the East Coast. But I have a bit, I have a lot of graw is the Irish word for love for the Lakers, with Kobe Bryant, and I like them both. But we can continue this conversation and see when it all comes down who's going to win. But definitely, I'll take the Nets.
All right. Well, if we're in the finals together, then we're sending you tickets.
We're going to a game.
Yeah. It was such a pleasure to spend time with you today, Maggie. You talked about the nuggets that were shared with you. There were so many amazing pieces of wisdom and nuggets that so many of us are going to be able to take away from your time. It's unbelievably inspiring to see somebody as thoughtful and amazing and wonderful and just full of life as you have all the success that you've had, and clearly help so many other people in their career, whether they're working for you today at Heineken or just part of your overall sphere of influence. I can tell you, I hope to be, 1/10 of the leader you are over time. And so you certainly inspired me to try to do lots of things better and different with my organization. And thank you so much for your time and your thoughtfulness and your wisdom here today.
Thank you so much. And you're way too kind. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for continuing to join our series. We make the promise that we're going to continue to get great, amazing leaders like Maggie to share their stories and what's going on. Stay safe, lots of success, and best wishes to everybody, and looking forward to you for upcoming sessions. See you all, and thank you again, Maggie.